Chapter 1. The moon was a cold, distant witness to the chaos unfolding below. Cassius Andar stood at the forefront of the human resistance, his sharp eyes scanning the horizon. The air crackled with tension as explosions echoed in the distance, signaling another wave of Xeltrax forces advancing on their makeshift base. Earth's future hung by a thread, and Cassius was its last hope. "Move out," he barked, his voice a calm, steady command cutting through the din of gunfire and shouts. His squad of seasoned soldiers, battle-hardened and scarred, sprang into action. Every soldier knew this could be their final stand. Cassius adjusted his wrist communicator, syncing it with the base's central command. His face was a mask of resolve, but his mind was elsewhere, replaying the memories of his fallen family. The Xeltrax invasion had taken everything from him, but he would not let them take Earth. Not while he was still standing. "We got 15 minutes, Sergeant Harlow called, his gravelly voice distorted by the static on the comms. "They'll be on us before we even know it." "Are we ready?" "Ready as we'll ever be," Cassius replied. "We'll hold them off, even if it costs us everything." He looked over his squad. Corporal Maya Torres, sharp-eyed and quick on the trigger, who had joined the resistance after losing her entire village to the Xeltrax. Lieutenant Adam Quinn, a quiet strategist whose mind had saved them countless times, and Specialist Zayn Malik, a communications expert who had managed to scramble enemy signals on more than one occasion. They were his family now, his brothers and sisters in arms. As the squad moved into position, Cassius felt the weight of the moment. He had fought in countless skirmishes, but this felt different. The desperation of the situation gnawed at him, a constant reminder that there was no turning back. The distant hum of Xeltrax transports grew louder. Their massive warships cast shadows over the ground, ominous silhouettes in the dim light. Cassius' heart quickened, but he didn't flinch. He had been through worse. He had to be the pillar that held them together, even when everything else was crumbling. "Stay sharp," Cassius said, his voice low but firm. "They're coming in hot." He turned to face his team, his gaze lingering on each of them, willing them to find the strength they needed. "We fight for Earth today. For our families, our friends, our homes. We will not go quietly into the night." Zane adjusted his earpiece. "I've got eyes on the enemy. They're about 5 clicks out. They've got ground troops and heavy artillery." "Good," Cassius nodded. "Then it's time we give them a welcome they won't forget." The ground shook beneath them as Xeltrax artillery pounded the earth. The force was overwhelming, but Cassius had a plan. It was risky, dangerously so, but it was their best shot. He turned to Adam. "We need to disrupt their communications now." Adam didn't hesitate. "Already on it," he said, tapping away at his device. His fingers moved with the precision of a surgeon. Within moments, a signal pulse shot out from a base, scrambling the Xeltrax network. Cassius could see the enemy's confusion in real time, their attempts to re-establish communications futile. "We bought some time," Adam said, glancing up. "But not much. Enough to hit them where it hurts," Cassius replied. "Torres, Malik, you're with me. We'll hit their supply line directly." Maya, always quick to respond, gave a sharp nod. "Understood, Captain." The squad split off into smaller teams, each moving with precision. Cassius and his immediate squad of 3 made their way to the supply route. The Xeltrax forces, scattered and confused, presented the perfect target. Cassius held up his hand, signaling the others to stop. His sharp eyes scanned the area ahead, the tension building with each passing second. "This is it," he whispered, more to himself than anyone else. "We move now." They sprinted toward the enemy's main supply depot, dodging fire from distant turrets. The sound of blaster fire echoed through the air, and Cassius' heart raced as his soldiers pushed forward, adrenaline propelling them faster than fear. The depot was just ahead. A sudden flash of light exploded from the side. Cassius dove to the ground, rolling behind cover. A few yards away, Zane shouted, "Incoming!" "We got hostiles." Without hesitation, Cassius rose, weapon in hand. "No mercy. Take them out." He led the charge, his rifle unleashing a barrage of precise shots. Maya moved with swift, lethal grace, picking off enemies as she advanced. Zane provided cover fire, his shots disabling enemy equipment with expert accuracy. As they neared the supply depot, Cassius saw what he needed to complete his mission, an enormous cache of explosives stacked near the center. This was their chance to cripple the Xeltrax's war machine. But just as Cassius moved to set the charges, a massive explosion rocked the ground, sending him sprawling. The world went dark for a moment, and he could taste the bitter tang of smoke in the air. He pushed himself up, disoriented, and immediately reached for his communicator. "Cassius, report." Harlow's voice came through, urgent and sharp. "We're alive," Cassius said, his voice hoarse. "But we're running out of time. Get ready to move. Activate the charges now." He planted the detonator, his hands shaking slightly, but not from fear. Only the raw, urgent energy that filled him. Maya, crouched beside him, kept her eyes on the advancing Xeltrax soldiers. "Cassius, you're not going to like this," Zane called out from the rear. "They're flanking us. We got a whole damn battalion incoming." "Do what you have to," Cassius ordered, the gravity of their situation setting in. "We're holding them here. Activate the damn charges." Zane didn't hesitate, and soon the depot erupted in a blaze of fire and smoke. The Xeltrax forces faltered, their ranks thrown into disarray by the explosion. Cassius didn't wait to see the results. He grabbed his rifle and rushed forward, determined to make the most of the chaos they had caused. "Push them back. Now," he roared. The battle continued, relentless and brutal, but as the smoke cleared, Cassius couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The war was far from over. Yet for the first time in days, he felt a flicker of hope, a fragile, fleeting light in the darkness. The tension was far from over, but the battle for Earth had just begun, and Cassius was ready to lead his people through the storm. Chapter 2: The hum of the power generators echoed through the underground resistance base, a constant reminder of the ever-present threat hanging over Earth. Cassius Andar stood in the heart of the command center, his gaze fixed on the strange artifact that now lay on the steel table before him. It was unlike anything he had ever seen, smooth, black as obsidian, and glowing faintly with a soft blue light. Its shape was fluid, almost organic, as though it had been shaped by an intelligence far older than anything Earth had encountered. Around him, his most trusted advisors, Lieutenant Adam Quinn, Corporal Maya Torres, and Specialist Zane Malik, gathered, their faces etched with exhaustion but tinged with the hope that the artifact might be the key to winning the war. "What do you think?" Cassius asked, his voice low, tinged with a quiet desperation. He couldn't shake the nagging feeling that this object, this relic from another time, was both a gift and a curse. Adam, as always, was the first to speak, his eyes scanning the object with the precision of a scientist. "It's unlike anything we've ever seen. The material, it's not from Earth. And these markings," he ran a finger over the symbols etched into the surface. "They're ancient, possibly from a civilization long gone." Maya stepped closer, peering over Adam's shoulder. "Could it be a weapon?" she asked, her tone skeptical but hopeful. "I mean, the Xeltrax are scared of it, and that's not something we see every day." "I don't think it's a weapon," Cassius muttered, rubbing his temple. "I've been fighting the Xeltrax for years. They're not afraid of simple tools. This," he paused, struggling to find the right words. "This feels different. It feels personal." The artifact seemed to pulse with a rhythm of its own, as though reacting to their presence. Zane, who had been silent until now, leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "If it's not a weapon, then what is it? And why do I feel like we've just stumbled into something way bigger than us?" Cassius exhaled sharply. "I don't know, but I intend to find out. Perhaps I can help." A voice interrupted from the doorway. Everyone turned in unison, startled by the unexpected intrusion. Standing in the doorway was an alien, an old Veridon, a species who had once been enemies of the Xeltrax, but had since become allies of humanity. His name was Ralu, and his face, though lined with age, was sharp and full of wisdom. "Ralu," Cassius said, his surprise quickly turning into cautious curiosity. "What brings you here?" "I've been sensing disturbances," Ralu said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. The energy this artifact is emitting is familiar to me. It is connected to something I once studied, long before your species discovered space. Cassius motioned for him to approach. What do you know? Rallo hesitated, then stepped forward, eyes narrowing as he observed the artifact. It is more than just an object of power. It is a key to an ancient force that was once wielded by species who lived among the stars long before your own kind began your journey. Are you telling me this is an alien weapon? Maya asked, incredulous. Rallo shook his head. No, not a weapon. A force of knowledge, of evolution. It has the power to awaken something inside of you, something that, until now, has been dormant, something that could change the balance of power in this galaxy. Cassius frowned. Awaken what? Your true potential, Rallo said quietly, his voice carrying an eerie reverence. This artifact holds the secrets of an ancient race known as the Lithar. They were once the dominant species in this sector of the galaxy, far more advanced than even the Xeltrax. But they vanished long ago, their knowledge lost to time. This artifact, however, contains a fragment of that knowledge. If it is activated, it will unlock abilities within your people that have remained dormant for millennia. Cassius felt a chill run down his spine. You're saying this could make us stronger? More powerful than the Xeltrax? Rallo nodded. Yes, but with great power comes great danger. The Lithar were destroyed, not by an external enemy, but by their own arrogance. They unlocked abilities that they were not ready for, abilities that, in the wrong hands, could consume everything. The weight of his words hung in the air. The idea of becoming stronger, of standing toe-to-toe with the Xeltrax, and actually winning, was intoxicating. But the potential for disaster was undeniable. Cassius turned to his team. We've been fighting to survive for too long. But if this can really give us the power we need, we can finally push the Xeltrax back. We could take back Earth. But at what cost? Adam interjected. If what Rallo says is true, we could be awakening something that's beyond our control. We've seen what desperation can do to people. Imagine what power, unchecked, could do. Maya crossed her arms, her gaze never leaving the artifact. We don't have a luxury of time. The Xeltrax won't wait around while we debate. We need an edge, and if this gives us one, then we use it. But we should be careful. Cassius was silent for a long moment, the weight of their options pressing down on him. He had seen the devastation the Xeltrax were capable of. Earth had already been torn apart. There was no turning back now. I'm going to activate it, Cassius said, his voice steady, though doubt flickered in his eyes. If it's our chance to win, we take it. But we do it cautiously. We don't rush into this. Rallo stepped forward, placing his hand gently on the artifact. Be prepared. The activation will not be simple. It will awaken something within you, something deep. And once you begin, there's no going back. Cassius nodded grimly. He felt the weight of the decision pressing on him. Activating the artifact could be humanity's last hope, or their final downfall. We don't have a choice, he said quietly. Earth is counting on us. As Cassius placed his hand on the artifact, he felt a pulse of energy surge through him. It was a subtle wave at first, like the calm before a storm. But as the symbols on the artifact began to glow brighter, the air seemed to hum with anticipation. The base grew silent, everyone holding their breath. Suddenly, the artifact flared with a brilliant light, and Cassius was thrown backward, a surge of power coursing through his body. His vision blurred, his heart raced, and for a brief moment he saw flashes, ancient cities, lost battles, and the faces of people he didn't recognize, all intertwined with the essence of the artifact. Then just as quickly it stopped. Cassius gasped for air, his body shaking, his mind reeling. The room was still, everyone staring at him, waiting for a sign. He met their gazes, his breath heavy, and whispered, "It started." The future of Earth now hung in the balance, and Cassius knew that the path ahead would be more dangerous than ever. But one thing was certain. Humanity was no longer fighting for survival alone. Chapter 3: Humanity's Power. The days after the activation of the artifact felt like a dream, and not the kind one ever wished for. Cassius Andar woke up each morning with an unfamiliar sense of weight in his bones. His mind felt sharp, clearer than it had ever been. But there was a constant hum in the back of his consciousness, a reminder that something was fundamentally different. Something had changed. It wasn't just him. The entire resistance seemed to be affected by the artifact's activation. There was a new intensity in the air, a strange energy that flowed through them all. Cassius had noticed it first in the field, when Maya had made a shot that would have been impossible even days ago, or when Zane's mind worked so quickly that he deciphered encrypted Xeltrax communications in minutes instead of hours. And Adam, usually reserved, had been so composed in his strategies that the whole resistance had begun to take notice. They had unlocked something, but Cassius wasn't sure if it was a blessing or a curse. Maya was the first to bring it up one morning in the briefing room. "We need to talk about this," she said, her voice steady but edged with concern. She crossed her arms, her eyes flicking toward the others. "This power, whatever we've awakened, it's not just helping us. It's changing us." Cassius met her gaze, his brow furrowing. He could see the subtle changes in her. The way her posture was straighter, more confident, and the way her eyes now burned with an intensity he hadn't seen before. "What are you saying, Maya?" "I'm saying," she began, her tone calm but forceful, "we're pushing limits. And I don't know if we're ready for what's coming next. I've felt it myself. When I focus, when I train, it's like my senses are sharper, faster than before. But the power, I don't think it's just enhancing us. It's evolving us, changing our very essence." Cassius took a long breath, his eyes moving from Maya to the others. They all shared the same unease, even if they didn't speak it aloud. The artifact was beginning to take root in them all, and no one knew exactly what the final result would be. "We don't have time to worry about that," Adam interrupted, his voice low and firm. "The Xeltrax are still coming. The artifact has given us an edge, and we have to use it to fight back. We can't afford to hold back now." "I agree," Cassius said, his voice sharp. He met Adam's eyes. "But I'm not ignoring what Maya said. We need to be aware. We don't know what we've unleashed yet." The room was silent for a moment as the weight of the situation hung over them all. They had gained power, unimaginable power, but at what cost? It was clear they were no longer just fighting for survival. They were becoming something else, something bigger. But the question remained, would that make them stronger, or would it lead to their undoing? The moment passed, and Cassius cleared his throat. "We have no choice. We'll push forward, but we do so carefully. We'll test this new power, see what it can do, but we won't lose ourselves in the process." The next few days were a blur of intense training, experimentation, and strategy sessions. Each day, the humans who had been affected by the artifact grew stronger. Cassius had to admit, the results were astonishing. The resistance soldiers moved with a speed and precision that rivaled the Xeltrax's best warriors. Maya's marksmanship was perfect, her hand-eye coordination enhanced beyond natural ability. Zane's hacking skills were now so advanced that he could infiltrate Xeltrax systems with ease, bypassing their firewalls and encryption codes without breaking a sweat. But there were side effects. One evening, during a training exercise, Cassius observed Adam, his trusted lieutenant, grow agitated. Adam was in the middle of a hand-to-hand combat simulation with Maya when he froze. His eyes were wide, as though he could see something no one else could. The training room was filled with the sounds of punches and grunts, but Adam's mind was elsewhere. "Adam!" Cassius called out sharply, snapping him back to reality. Adam blinked, shaking his head as though coming out of a daze. "Sorry, I saw something. A future? I don't know." His words were disjointed, the confusion evident on his face. Cassius stepped closer, concerned. "What did you see?" Adam wiped a hand over his face, trying to regain control. "I saw us winning, Cassius. I saw the Xeltrax defeated. But I also saw something else. Something dark. It's like the power we've unlocked isn't just an advantage. It's an invitation to something bigger. And I don't know if we're ready for it." Cassius felt the cold chill that Adam's words left behind. The power wasn't just enhancing them. It was giving them glimpses into something far beyond their comprehension. "We have to stay focused," Cassius said, his voice low. "We're not here to change the future. We're here to survive it." The next few days were marked by a series of small victories against the Xeltrax. They were gaining ground, but every success fell hollow. Cassius could feel the tension rising among his soldiers. They were pushing their bodies beyond the limits of human endurance, but some were beginning to crack under the strain. There were whispers among the ranks about strange dreams, visions, and the growing intensity of their abilities. As the power within them expanded, so did their fears. That night, as Cassius stood alone in the command center, he stared at the map sprawled before him. The Xeltrax forces were advancing, and the window for a final strike was closing fast. They needed to act quickly, but he wasn't sure they were ready for what would come next. The artifact had unlocked something in them, something primal, something dangerous. His thoughts were interrupted by a voice from behind him. "Captain," Maya said quietly, stepping into the room. "We need to talk." Cassius turned to face her, his eyes heavy with fatigue. "What is it?" "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "Not just of the Xeltrax anymore. I'm scared of what we're becoming. It's like we've crossed a line, and there's no going back." Cassius stood silently for a moment, taking in her words. "We're fighting to save Earth, Maya. That's all that matters." "I know," she said, her eyes searching his. "But when does it stop being about saving Earth? When does it become about something else? About the power we've unlocked?" He couldn't answer her. The truth was he didn't know. But one thing was certain, whatever was happening to them, they had no choice but to keep going forward. The future wasn't something they could afford to dwell on, not when the Xeltrax were closing in. "Tomorrow," Cassius said, his voice resolute, "we take the fight to them." The battle for Earth was about to enter a new phase. Cassius could feel it in the air, a crackling tension that hinted at the storm to come. Humanity was changing, and whether that would lead them to victory or destruction was still unknown. But the clock was ticking, and they had no time left to hesitate. The fight was on. Chapter 4. The Xeltrax fleet loomed like a shadow over Earth. Cassius Andar stood in the war room, eyes fixed on the large holographic map that displayed their final plan. The Resistance had done everything in their power to prepare for this moment, but the weight of it pressed down on him. Earth was on the brink of extinction, and the next few hours would determine whether humanity would rise from the ashes or be wiped out forever. "We've got one shot at this," Cassius muttered, his voice tight. "We can't afford any mistakes." Adam Quinn, ever the strategist, leaned over the map. "We've set up traps along their landing routes, and our main forces are in position. But they outnumber us. If they push through the first wave, we'll be fighting them in the streets." "We won't let that happen," Maya Torres added, her expression hard as stone. "We hit them fast, and we hit them hard." Cassius nodded. Maya had become something of a symbol for the Resistance, unwavering and strong. But even she was feeling the weight of their new powers. The artifact's influence had been subtle, but profound. Every soldier had felt the change, the strange surge of energy that pulsed in their veins. It had made them faster, stronger, but also more aggressive, more unpredictable. "I'll lead the strike team," Cassius said, voice firm. "Adam, Zane, stay here and keep track of the enemy movements. Maya, you're with me." Maya nodded. "Let's make it count." The air was thick with tension as Cassius and Maya led their team through the ruins of what was once a bustling city center. The Resistance had taken control of the outskirts, but the heart of the city still held the key to humanity's survival. The Xeltrax had established a forward base, a heavily fortified position designed to launch their final assault on Earth's major population centers. "They'll be expecting us," Maya muttered, scanning the skyline for any signs of movement. "We'll need to move fast." Cassius felt it before he saw it, a disturbance in the air, a shift in the environment that made his hair stand on end. The artifact's energy thrummed inside him, a constant reminder that they were no longer just human. He didn't know what to make of it, but he couldn't afford to dwell on it now. "Stay sharp," he ordered, his voice a low command. They moved through the narrow alleyways, the city eerily silent except for the distant hum of Xeltrax transports. Cassius could feel the eyes of his soldiers on him, the pressure mounting as they neared their target. They were outnumbered, but the element of surprise was their greatest weapon. Suddenly, a loud explosion shattered the stillness. The shock wave sent them sprawling to the ground, but they quickly recovered. The Xeltrax had breached their first line of defense. "Time to go," Cassius barked, pushing forward. They sprinted toward the Xeltrax stronghold, weapons at the ready. Cassius felt his body moving faster than ever before, his senses sharper. The energy from the artifact coursed through his veins, but it was starting to feel like something else, a hunger, a need to unleash everything inside him. He clenched his fist, forcing himself to focus. As they reached the outer perimeter, the first wave of Xeltrax soldiers appeared, heavily armored and ready for battle. Without hesitation, Cassius opened fire, his shots precise and deadly. Maya was right beside him, her rifle snapping off shots with an eerie accuracy that seemed almost inhuman. The resistance moved like a well-oiled machine, each soldier executing their part of the plan with deadly efficiency. But even as they gained ground, Cassius could feel the tension building. The artifact had given them an edge, but it was also starting to take its toll. His thoughts felt disjointed, his mind racing faster than his body could keep up. "Cassius," Maya called out, snapping him back to reality. "We need to move." The Xeltrax were regrouping. A massive wave of reinforcements was closing in. Cassius could see it. Their army was pushing back, and the resistance was starting to lose momentum. "No retreat," Cassius shouted, rallying his soldiers. "Push forward. We can't let them get control of the city." The streets erupted in chaos as the two forces collided. Explosions rocked the ground, and the air was filled with the sounds of gunfire and shouts. Cassius fought with a ferocity he had never known, his mind detached from the violence around him. He moved with purpose, driven by something deeper than survival, a force he couldn't explain. Maya was at his side, but even she seemed caught in the grip of the power they had unlocked. Her eyes burned with an intensity that matched his own, and her movements were fluid, almost unnatural. Together, they tore through the Xeltrax ranks, clearing a path toward the central command center. "We're almost there," Maya said, her voice strained but determined. Cassius nodded, his chest heaving. They had to reach the control center, the heart of the Xeltrax operation. If they could disable their communications and command systems, they could cripple their entire invasion force. But as they neared the command center, the ground beneath them trembled. A deafening roar shook the air, and the sky above darkened with the arrival of the Xeltrax's flagship, a massive warship that blotted out the sun. "No," Cassius breathed, his voice barely audible. It was the final act of desperation. The Xeltrax were willing to destroy everything to ensure their victory. The flagship released a barrage of fire, obliterating the surrounding buildings and sending shockwaves through the streets. Cassius and Maya were thrown to the ground, their bodies slammed into the debris. "Cassius!" Maya shouted, crawling toward him. "Get up!" He shook his head, dazed but alive. The destruction was overwhelming, and their chance to reach the command center was slipping away. But Cassius wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. "On your feet," he growled, pushing himself up. "We take them down now." With renewed determination, they surged forward despite the chaos surrounding them. The flagship was close now, its massive guns trained on their position. But they couldn't let it win. They had to finish what they had started. Cassius's mind raced. He could feel the power of the artifact pulsing inside him, and for the first time, he allowed himself to embrace it. The surge of energy was almost overwhelming. He focused it, channeling it into a single, devastating strike. With a roar, he unleashed the full force of the artifact, a blast of energy that tore through the air and struck the flagship. The ship shuddered, its engines flickering, and for a moment, Cassius thought they had succeeded. But the flagship wasn't done yet. It retaliated with a focused energy beam, and the world around Cassius went white. The battle for Earth was far from over. But Cassius knew one thing for sure. They were no longer fighting for survival alone. They were fighting for the future of humanity. And whatever came next, they would face it together. Chapter 5. The air was thick with the remnants of war. The streets of Earth, once teeming with life, now lay in ruins, scarred by the devastating battle between humanity and the Xeltrax. Cassius Andar stood on the rooftop of what had once been a thriving city center, looking out over the devastation. The sky was streaked with smoke, the remnants of the Xeltrax flagship still smoldering in the distance. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing on him, the burden of leadership heavier than ever. The victory had come at a tremendous cost. The resistance had triumphed, but the Earth they had fought for was forever changed. The power of the artifact had transformed them all. Humans who had once been powerless, now wielding abilities that defied comprehension. But with that power had come a dangerous edge, a hunger for more. The line between savior and destroyer had blurred. Cassius ran a hand through his disheveled hair, the memory of the battle still fresh in his mind. They had won, but what would come next? The Earth was free, but the price of their freedom was uncertain. Behind him, Maya Torres approached, her footsteps light but deliberate. She stood beside him, her gaze fixed on the horizon. Her eyes, usually filled with determination, were now clouded with uncertainty. The change in her was evident. Like the others, she had embraced the power of the artifact. But at what cost? "We did it," Maya said, her voice soft but filled with a quiet pride. "We pushed them back. Earth is ours again." Cassius nodded, but the victory felt hollow. "We've lost so much. Too much." Maya didn't respond immediately, her eyes still on the ruins. "What now? What happens to us?" Cassius turned to face her, the weight of her question settling deep within him. "I don't know," he admitted. "The artifact gave us the power to defeat the Xeltrax, but it didn't come with a map of what to do next. We're not the same as we were before. Some of us have changed." She looked at him, her gaze intense. "You think it's the artifact? The power it unlocked?" "It's not just that," Cassius said, his voice low. "It's what we've become. The strength, the speed, the clarity. I can't turn it off. I can't control it all the time." Maya exhaled slowly, her fingers clenching into fists at her sides. "I feel it too. It's like we've crossed a line, Cassius. One we can't go back from." A silence hung between them, thick with the weight of their shared thoughts. Cassius felt it, the hunger that had taken root in his soul. They had won, but the victory had awakened something in him, something primal. The artifact had given him power beyond his understanding. It was a struggle to resist the urge to use it. The need to fight, to push further, was always there, lingering just beneath the surface. "I'm not sure we can stop it," Maya said, her voice breaking the silence. "The power, this power, it's not just an advantage. It's something more, something dangerous." Cassius glanced back at the smoldering remains of the Xeltrax flagship. It was clear, the Earth had won, but the war was not over. The struggle was no longer just about survival. It was about what kind of humanity would emerge from this new era. Could they control this power, or would it consume them? The ground beneath them trembled slightly as another aftershock from the destruction rattled through the city. They both turned toward the source, but it wasn't another attack. It was the tremors of change, the last remnants of the battle they had fought. And yet, the Earth still trembled, not from external forces, but from the conflict within themselves. "We need to make sure the power doesn't destroy us," Cassius said quietly. "The Xeltrax may be gone, but the real fight is just beginning." Maya met his eyes, and for a moment, there was an unspoken understanding between them. They had become something new, something dangerous, and they could either control it or be destroyed by it. They weren't just warriors now. They were the leaders of the future, the ones who would shape what came next. The days following the victory were filled with recovery and rebuilding. Earth's cities, though scarred, began to show signs of life. The resistant soldiers, now heroes, worked alongside the survivors to clear the rubble, restore communication networks, and rebuild what the Xeltrax had torn apart. But even as the world began to heal, Cassius could feel the lingering tension. The power of the artifact still pulsed within them all, an ever-present reminder that they had changed forever. In the heart of the Resistance base, Adam Quinn stood over a holographic table, his brow furrowed in concentration. The data from the final battle had been analyzed, and there were troubling findings. "This is bigger than we thought," Adam said, glancing up at Cassius. "The Xeltrax weren't just here for Earth. They were here because of the artifact. This is just the beginning." Cassius frowned, stepping closer to the table. "What are you saying?" Adam's fingers hovered over the controls, bringing up a series of images. The artifact wasn't just an energy source. It was a beacon, a signal. It's connected to something much larger, something we can't even begin to comprehend. The Xeltrax were here to destroy it before it could awaken. Cassius felt a chill run down his spine. "So we've just scratched the surface?" Adam nodded grimly. "I'm afraid so. The artifact isn't just a tool. It's a key to something far more powerful than we can imagine. And now that it's activated, there's no telling what it will lead to." Cassius took a deep breath. He had hoped for a quiet victory, a moment of peace, but it seemed that was never in the cards. The artifact had unlocked humanity's potential, but it had also set them on a path they couldn't turn back from. "We'll have to be ready," Cassius said, his voice steady. "If there's more to this, we face it together." Maya, who had been standing in the doorway, stepped forward. "We've already changed the course of history, Cassius. We've won. But now we need to decide what kind of future we're going to create with this power." Cassius turned to face her, a fire burning in his chest. The future of humanity was uncertain, but one thing was clear. They were no longer just survivors. They were the beginning of something new, something powerful. "We will create a future where we control our destiny," Cassius said, his voice resolute. "The artifact may have awakened us, but we will decide what comes next." As the sun began to set over the ruins of the city, Cassius stood with Maya, Adam, and the rest of the Resistance, watching as Earth began to heal. They had won the battle, but the war for their future was just beginning. The dawn of a new era had arrived, and humanity would shape it, for better or worse. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, Cassius felt a flicker of hope. They had faced the darkness and emerged stronger. The world was theirs to rebuild,